Good morning. My name is Amy Marlene Robichaud. I studied political science and public administration at the University of Ottawa, but I was born, raised, and left my heart in Calgary, Alberta. I'm 21, and I have a plan to make Canada a stronger place socially, politically, and economically. Just like the women around me, I believe that every Canadian citizen deserves the ability to participate politically. I also think they should participate politically. But in order for that participation to be meaningful, I think our federal government needs to change the way it does business. I think it needs to look differently, it needs to talk differently, and it definitely needs to listen to Canadians differently. I have a three-step plan that's going to make Canada a stronger democracy. First things first, Senate reform. There are reforms that Parliament can undertake under its own accord to ensure the Senate is more accountable to Canadians. And my plan includes the following: maximum 15-year term limits for senators that are non-renewable, eliminating the minimum age, wealth, and property requirements for who can become a senator, televising Senate proceedings so that the senators are accountable in real time to Canadians. And as Prime Minister, I will commit to appointing senators based on provincial recommendation. I recognize that Senate reform requires wholesale democratic reform, and so I would also establish a federal royal commission to research how best to elect senators and how best to distribute Senate seats in Canada. Once the Royal Commission has made its recommendations, I commit to putting those recommendations to the provinces and to every Canadian through the constitutional amendment formula, so that all of Canada can have a say in what the Senate looks like, and who sits there, and in how Parliament listens to Canadians. Step 2 of the plan is about better federal-provincial relations. We need to give the provinces an official and meaningful way to influence the federal agenda. As Prime Minister, I would legislate that the First Ministers' Conference must happen yearly. I would also establish a permanent secretariat staffed by the provinces, but in Ottawa, that will coordinate the logistics and the agenda of that conference every year, so that during those conferences, the Prime Minister's ear will be on what's important to the provinces and what the provinces feel needs to be the priorities of the federal government. The third step of my plan is about getting value for the votes that Canadians cast in the federal election. I will require every member of Parliament to compose a 2-page report for the constituents in their ridings that will be mailed out yearly that indicates the following 4 things: the inputs that member of Parliament used during the year to accomplish activities, their office budgets, the amount of hours they sat in the House, the activities that MP actually undertook, what bills they voted on, what petitions on behalf of their riding they tabled in the House. Next, the outputs that MP achieved. So what tangible benefits have they achieved for the people who voted them into Parliament? Lastly, we require the MP to take a step back and look at what are the outcomes of their outputs. By this mechanism in this report, I will ensure that MPs are accountable first and foremost to the people who elect them and not the parties they sit with. This is what I mean by getting the value for the votes that we cast in our federal elections. Our members of Parliament are our representatives first, and representatives of our party second. That's how it should be in a democracy.
So I started today on Parliament Hill, and I told you that I think Canada needs to be a stronger democracy. I gave you my 3-step plan for making Canada a stronger democracy. But at the end of the day, what it's really about is ensuring that Canadians feel as though their voices are listened to. Ensuring that Canadians feel as though they have a reason to speak up. I believe that Canada should be a country where the government not only values the input of citizens, but facilitates the input of its citizens. I think by having a fully elected Parliament, by ensuring that there's a mechanism for our provinces and our federal government to cooperate with each other, and by holding our individual members of Parliament accountable to their constituents in their ridings, first and foremost, we can make Canada a stronger democracy. If we're going to be stronger socially, or economically, or politically, we need to start by listening to our citizens, by ensuring that the vision of Canada is the vision that is articulated collectively by all Canadians. Ensure that government is about cooperation and compromise, and not about confrontation and politics. As Prime Minister, I will ensure that government is about Canadians, that Canada isn't about political parties or partisan statements or provinces fighting with one another or with the federal government, but at the end of the day, that Canada is about Canadians.